Hey YouTube, I'm Coach Dragonmar and welcome to a new video. Today we have a fun one. We're going to be going over some of the most common mistakes that I see in low elo and how you can fix them. Now, the great things about the mistakes in this video is that they're all relatively easy to fix, but they're still very important to understand and to make sure you have these ironed away, especially if you plan on climbing those ranks. If you guys enjoy these videos as well, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And of course, in the comments today, let me know which of these mistakes, if any, or maybe if all, that you make. And before we start the video, I'd like to thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Valorant Tracker. If you want to get better, Valorant Tracker's in-game app can give you the edge that you need to rank up. Valorant Tracker has the stats of your gameplay for you to analyze, from positive and negative trends in your recent games, maybe your overall KD or ADR broken down by agents, and even win rates on maps that are broken down by the attack and defensive sides. I've been using Valorant Tracker in all of my coaching sessions for a reason. It truly does help. If I can check your tracker and see that you have a 9% headshot rate with the Vandal, we know what we need to start focusing on. Valorant Tracker also shows live match statistics like ADR, enemy ranks, and kills per round, helping you track your contribution in the game. Or maybe you're like me and learning some new lineups. Valorant Tracker also has you covered with guides and lineups for every agent. The best part is that it's completely free. Check it out yourself with the link in the video description. Starting this video off strong, we're going with mistake number one, which is going to be crouch spraying. Now, you might look at this and be like, oh, well, you know, Kyle, crouch spraying, you actually should crouch in some situations. Fine. But the problem here is for people who do it on every fight for every single type of situation. Now, I have coached a lot of players at a lot of different ranks, and let me tell you, this is something that persists even at the higher ranks, but is way more common in lower ranks. Now, there's a few reasons for this. First and foremost, players will come from other games often where crouching is either more beneficial or has less of an impact. But in a game like Valorant with such a low time to kill, right? It's very, very fast how quickly you die, especially with one shot to the head, right? Crouching actually is even worse than it might first appear. Now, when is crouching particularly bad, you might ask? Well, at long range. And if you can't figure this one out on your own, let me kind of explain this, right? So think about a long range gunfight and think about what you're seeing. You see a player standing up, the head is up high, body, obviously then legs, right? Most of the time you're going to be aiming relatively high looking for a headshot. But what about if they crouch? Well, now they've crouched, they've made their hitbox smaller, there's less of them to shoot, but their head is still there and it's still the same size, right? Because we're at the same distance away. So now when you take a shot at them, what used to be a body shot, which by the way, most people at range are hitting body shots, most likely becomes a headshot. And this is the problem, is that when you crouch, you lower where your head position is. And because of that, you often just crouch into more headshots, right? Now, close range, especially very close range gunfights, you actually can get away with crouching. And I try to incorporate it a bit more into how I fight. But at long range, you guys need to stop crouching, okay? You are getting yourself killed. Instead, you want to be focusing on incorporating strafes into those fights, right? Now, the fix for this is relatively simple. If you find yourself crouch spraying in every single situation, every fight you get in, you're crouched, that's bad. Let's unbind crouch or rebind it to another button and go into deathmatch and practice it out. This is a tried and true method. Most people have and will do this at some point in their career if they have a problem with crouching. I'm not above telling people to do this. This is something I've never done personally, but I know it works. Now, the other thing here is understanding the bad parts about crouch spraying. So again, this is the mental side of it. If you understand this, you should know why it's bad. That should also motivate you not to do it. Now, mistake number two is probably one of the biggest causes of frustration at lower ranks, and that is essentially team flashing, right? It's not communicating flashes, okay? So this is a really big problem in lower ranks where there is a big lack of comms. Now, if you are somebody who plays flashes and you don't talk at lower ranks, I'm sorry, but you're also part of the problem, right? So the problem here is that you might have the best intentions for your flash, and it might honestly be a pretty well-timed and in a decent positioned flash as well. But the thing here is your team is not going to be able to read your mind. And at low ranks, even in my coaching sessions, I see my students do this. They expect their teammates to know what's going to happen next. They expect them to read their mind and expect them not to get blinded. The simple truth is that you're almost always going to blind your teammates if you're not calling out these flashes properly. And if you are calling them out, sometimes you're also putting too much emphasis on making sure you're not blinding people, so you lose the value of the flash in the first place because it throws off the timing. So this is where proper communication is very important, right? You need to be calling out the location of your flash before you plan on using it. For example, if you're using a sky flash, you should be calling that out well before it gets popped. You'd be like, hey, I'm going to flash back sight, or hey, I'm flashing in tube, I'm flashing elbow. You want to call these things out. Very simple, very basic calls. Don't get crazy with it. Don't go, start making a paragraph in your mind about, I'm going to explain every step of what I'm doing here. Just call out the location of the flash and you fixed it. That's the fix for this. Stop blinding your teammates. You know what I mean? Every single flash you use, call it out, especially if teammates are around. Like if you're off on your own, like solo holding a site, okay, fine. But if you guys are near teammates and it is possible for them to be flashed, call it out well beforehand. This will solve almost all of your flashing troubles. Mistake number 3 is a little bit like mistake number 1, but it's actually about standing still while you're fighting. So this is something that you've probably heard me talk about if you've been to a coaching session of mine, or you've come on stream, or maybe watched some of my previous videos where I talk about the importance of incorporating movement into how you fight. Now, when it came to crouch spraying, crouching is a type of movement and can be useful up close, but obviously very negative overall, especially at long range. This is where strafing comes into play. This is where movement comes into play. Now, you've also maybe seen in one of my videos where I talk about game sense and about using minimap, that you want to be incorporating movement into how you hold positions, because that movement will help enable you to take peeks and take fights and then move back into cover to check the map. Strafing is incredibly important and has so many benefits, very few negatives. Another great part about strafing in fights, and by the way, when we talk about strafing, we're talking about using A and D on your keyboard, A and D strafing, left and right. There's no back and forth. There's no WS strafing. That's not a strafe, right? By the way, take all of your fights by holding A and D. Please don't ever press W when you're taking a fight, unless it's maybe with an SMG. But please, A and D only. Now, another great part about strafing is that it will allow you to surprise the enemy. This is really important. When you guys are standing still in a corner, you're not catching anybody by surprise. They're going to peek that corner with the expectation that there might be someone there. You, on the other hand, are going to be holding and waiting, right? You're going to be waiting for them. And I will always give an advantage to the player who is peeking rather than the player who is holding, especially if you're in a pushed up position or something like that. This is why I always try to strafe. I always try to jiggle out of these corners so I can see more, so I can get the info first and catch the enemy by surprise. You will not believe the amount of people I am able to kill simply because I take the fight. I am the one that brings the fight to them, right? Do not sit still. Do not wait for these things to come to you. Be the aggressor. Be the one taking that little bit of space, catch the timing on them, and get those kills. I promise you it's worth it. So the fix here is simple. You want to be practice strafing, especially in deathmatch. If you are new to strafing, deathmatch and the practice range are going to be your best friends. You want to work on the timing and make sure that every single time you strafe, you are fully accurate when you shoot. You want to be as fast as possible. Always try to be moving when you're holding, never be standing still. Make sure you're only using the A and the D key whenever you're taking a fight, and this should solve the majority of your problems when it comes to movement in fights. Mistake number 4 is kind of funny. It's about dumping utility with no follow-up. So this is a huge problem that I see, where I have a lot of people who I coach and a lot of people I've talked to and watched in the past who essentially understand how valuable utility is, right? And they know that, hey, I got to get these abilities out. You know, maybe you're playing Sova, you drone, you use your dart, use some shocks, or maybe you're playing Sky, you throw a flash, you dog, right? Or maybe you're playing Breach and you use an aftershock and you use your flashes, right? You know how important the abilities are in your kit, but when you use them is oftentimes even more important than just using them, you know? And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. They're on one side of that spectrum rather than in that happy medium where they're able to kind of do both. So they're either dumping utility or just holding on to it, right? And this is where we have to fix it, because the problem here is that at low ranks, I'll often see players throw all of their abilities at once, even the entire team sometimes, using pretty much everything. Then they'll get stalled out by one smoke and a molly, and suddenly we have nothing for the remaining minute 20 in that half, or in the round, excuse me, right? And this is one of the big problems that I think is such an easy fix. Better communication here. Talk to your teammates. Ask them if they need the flashes. Do they want the smokes yet? Do they want your molly? Do they need whatever, a drone, a dart? Talk to them. Communication is key to solving all of these problems, but there is also one other thing here, and that's going to be map awareness. that's looking at your minimap, looking at your teammate locations and figuring out, okay, if I have players in these spots, does it make sense for me to use my abilities yet? Because what ends up happening is oftentimes players will use abilities in the proper location at the wrong time. And that's what we're trying to fix. We're trying to fix the fact that the abilities are either going too early or not at all, right? And in this case, we're talking about dumping utility. So we're talking about using it all at once and not having anything left over. And another big problem here is not having early information, not understanding, hey, if there's a smoke down, we probably don't want to blow all of our abilities quite yet. Let's wait till that smoke fades, and then we'll look at hitting the site. Teamwork and map awareness are how you fix this problem. And I also did want to say as well, just quickly, about the follow-up portion. Follow-up is extremely important when it comes to ability usage. So whenever you use an ability, I want you to always ask yourself, how do I follow this up? What can I do to follow up this ability? What is the plan? Who is making a play off of this? And if you can't answer it, do not use it. You guys know I can't end this video without talking about crosshair placement at least once, right? And by the way, I will have an aim guide about that coming out soon. But the final mistake number 5 for this video, is about aiming at walls. This is a huge problem at the lower ranks. This is something that a lot of people are still struggling with because they know that they need to be looking somewhere, and they know they want to pregame, they want to take a fight because they're ready, but they end up just staring at the wall. What's the problem here? Well, it's timing. Timing is going to get you killed in these situations, right? We see this so many times. If you've ever been to one of my streams and you've watched my coaching sessions that I do on Saturdays, you've seen this where I'll have a player I'm coaching stare at a wall because they're going to pre-aim, they're ready to peek. An enemy will surprise them, come around the corner, they're staring at a wall, they have to make some insane flick to hit it, they never hit it and they die. This is why we don't stare at walls. This is why we always stare at the edge of the wall when we're going to peek. This is proper peeking etiquette. Again, that's a video for another day as well. But this is one thing you can instantly improve. Stop staring at walls. And to do this, I always think of this saying, always be aiming at something. Always be aiming at something. And the something, of course, in this situation is the location of potential enemies, right? A wall is something technically, but I mean where an enemy could be, right? So you always want to be looking, okay, if I'm in this position, what am I aiming at? I see so many times people be rocking up like a man on bind, staring at the ground, staring at a wall, staring at a wall U-Haul, or maybe just looking at the truck or the default plant spot on A, right? Instead of holding triple, looking at U-Haul, looking at heaven, watching the shower push, there's so many times where you will catch yourself staring at nothing. Always be aiming at the location of where an enemy could be, right? That's the mindset you got to have to fix this, because that is a portion of crosshair placement that takes a little bit longer to develop and is a problem with mainly how you're peaking as well. It's improper peaks. And again, that's something that's a little more nuanced and something we'll have to work on in a later video. But to fix this, you got to change that mindset and make yourself always think about this. What am I aiming at? And make sure it's location of where an enemy could be, and do your best, by the way, to figure out the best spot for that. So generally speaking, there is going to be a better location for an enemy to be. That's where you want to aim. Otherwise, it's a 50-50, and you just kind of can aim whatever in those situations. But this is a huge problem and a huge part of crosshair placement that I probably don't talk about enough. And guys, that will do it for 5 mistakes at low elo and how to fix them. All relatively easy to fix, but very important to understand why they're bad and why it's so easy to fix them. So hopefully this video was useful to you. Again, these have all popped up recently with coaching. That's why I wanted to share them. And of course, there's so many more I can talk about. So this probably isn't the last time you'll see this video. So I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Make sure you comment what you want to see next and which mistakes you're making. And also subscribe for more. Got some great guides coming. I'll see you again soon. Take it easy and peace.